Hi everyone, Chris Tallman, Director of Instruction here at Gray Horse. I'm going to be making a weekly tips series, and today we're going to talk about chipping. Chipping is one of my favorite parts of the game just because it takes a lot of creativity. There's so many different types of shots we can hit with different clubs around the greens, but there's usually a higher percentage shot that we're going to hit in most situations on the golf course. So that means that shot is going to be more successful more often. I see a lot of players that are using a really high lofted wedge and hitting the ball high in the air, which requires a bigger swing. I like to say bigger swing, bigger miss. Smaller swing, smaller miss. So if we take a lower lofted wedge around the greens, and when I say lower lofted, a gap wedge, a 52, 54 degree wedge, let's try to stay away from those 58, 60 degree wedges, but hit a smaller flighted down shot around the greens is going to be a little bit more successful more often. So I want to talk a little bit about a shot or a technique that we can use on the golf course to save a lot of shots. So before I get into that, I like to talk about the makeup of a golf club, and in particular a wedge. So we have the shaft of the club, we have the head of the club, and on the head we have the face, the sole, which is the bottom, and then the leading edge here. So if I were to take this club and I were to lay it on the ground and with the shaft going up and down, you'll see that there's a gap between the leading edge and the ground. So if I take this club and I lean it more forward, you'll notice that that gap goes away and that leading edge sits flush on the ground and it exposes this face here. This is where we want to make contact. And the most important part of chipping is centerness of contact. How well we make contact with that ball is going to dictate the spin that's on the shot, it's going to dictate the distance it travels, and it's really going to dictate that consistency. So when we set up to hit a shot, and this is a shot that I use probably 90% for all chip shots on a golf course during the course of a round. There are situations where we have to hit a higher shot, hit a nice soft little flop shot, but we're not going to get into that because we're going to face a shot where we're sitting in the center of the green, just short in the fairway or just in the rough, and we have a pretty straightforward shot. Those are the shots that we want to capitalize on. So we're going to have this ball sitting here. When I first set up to a short shot like this, again, I have probably a gap wedge or a pitching wedge. I'm going to set up with this ball positioned back in my stance. You'll notice that my stance is a little bit open because we're not making a big swing, we're not making a big turn, so basically I'm presetting my hips a little bit more towards the target. I like to get close to the ball so that I have a nice amount of control over it, and I'm going to set my hands in front of the ball. So the shaft is leaning forward just like we were talking about before. The butt of the shaft is aiming towards my left hip. And as I set up to this, you'll notice that there's an angle between the shaft of the club and my right arm. I'm going to maintain that during the entire swing. So as I take this swing, you'll notice that I'm maintaining that angle here because we don't want to get wristy. Once I start engaging these wrists, that club is going to open up. I might blade it, I might hit behind it, or I might get underneath it and the ball's not going to travel the distance that I wanted it to travel. So ball position is back in my stance, hands are forward, and I'm going to really make sure that my weight is on this left foot. I want to make sure that weight is there because during a chip shot, small swing, we don't have time to transfer weight. We're going to keep it right there on that front foot, hands forward, and I'm just going to make a little swing, and I'm going to make sure that I make nice solid contact. So these shots are going to come out a little bit lower, they're flighted down, and they're usually going to have a little bit of spin on them. But most importantly, they're going to be consistent, and we're going to be able to hit them a little bit more often. Nice, easy shot. And like I said, this is a shot that I use 90% of the time, whether it's on the golf course, in a tournament. It's a shot that I can rely on under pressure, and give it a shot. I think you're going to have a lot of success with it. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.